3 IDs? For what? I'm going to need 3 forms of ID, ma'am. The voice was sharp. Loud. Loud enough that heads turned. A few customers glanced up from their phones. A man paused mid-withdrawal. The security guard at the door shifted slightly. Behind the marble counter, Madison, a white bank teller in her 40s with a tight ponytail and tighter attitude, stared coldly across the desk. The black woman on the other side didn't flinch. She stood tall, calm, quiet. Dressed in a pale blue blouse, beige trench coat, and polished heels, every inch of her radiated class. But Madison didn't see that. All she saw was someone who didn't belong. 3 IDs? The woman asked gently. Why would you need that for a deposit? Madison leaned in. We don't normally see people like you bringing folders marked $10 million. Gasps. A few people turned completely. Someone whispered. But the woman didn't blink. She simply smiled, a calm, knowing smile. You're going to regret saying that. She opened the folder. And that's when the entire bank changed. She walked in like she owned the place. The moment she entered, the temperature in the bank seemed to shift. Not literally. But people felt her. Not because she was loud. Not because she demanded anything. But because she walked in, like she belonged there. Like this wasn't new to her. Like this bank was her bank. Her name was Dr. Aaliyah Grant. Harvard alum. World-renowned philanthropist. CEO of 3 major foundations. But no one here knew that. They only saw her skin color, her natural curls, her confidence. And for people like Madison, confidence like that on a black woman was seen as threatening. Aaliyah walked up to the counter, folder in hand. She waited patiently while Madison helped an elderly white man deposit a check. She didn't interrupt. Didn't sigh. But Madison glanced at her. Then did a double take at the folder. Bold text in gold lettering. Grant Family Foundation, 2025 donations package. Madison squinted. Then, without even greeting her, said, We're not hiring today. Aaliyah blinked once. Calm. I'm here to make a donation. Madison's smile faltered. To who? Aaliyah handed over the folder. Inside, authorization papers, verification letters, and a donation amount that made Madison's jaw lock tight. $10 million to be donated to Wells Financial Trust. Madison stared. But said nothing. Not yet. Because she didn't believe it. You expect me to believe that? Madison's fingers hovered above the folder like it might explode. Her eyes scanned the documents again and again, hoping to find something fake. A stamp out of place. A smudged signature. Any reason to dismiss this woman. But everything was pristine. Still, she laughed. Tight. Awkward. You'll have to forgive me, miss. It's just, we don't usually get people walking in with this kind of money. Aaliyah raised an eyebrow. And what kind of people would that be? Madison's smile stiffened. Oh no, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant, usually we handle donations like this through the board. Aaliyah didn't move. Didn't blink. She simply said, The board knows. They're expecting it. Madison's fingers twitched. She wasn't expecting that. She cleared her throat, suddenly flustered. Okay, well, we'll need some verification then. ID, 2, no, actually, 3 forms of ID. Gasps from a nearby customer. A woman mouthed, 3? But Madison just smiled. Fake. Frosty. Bank policy. For large amounts. Aaliyah reached into her purse and handed over a sleek black leather wallet. What she pulled out wasn't just ID. It was a United Nations diplomatic clearance card. Madison's fingers trembled. But her voice? Still sharp. We'll still need more than this. Just doing my job. Madison placed the documents down slowly, too slowly, like she was buying time. She glanced over her shoulder, then gave a tight, artificial smile. I'll just have to get this approved, by management. Aaliyah folded her arms, calm but firm. I was told you'd be handling it directly. Madison's smile thinned. Well, it's not usual to process this kind of transaction at the teller window. Behind Aaliyah, the line was growing. A man in a tailored suit glanced at his watch. A mother shifted her child from one hip to the other. But no one said a word. Aaliyah remained still. If this is about procedure, fine. But if it's about something else, I'd like to know. Madison stiffened. Ma'am, I'm just doing my job. Are you? That question hung in the air. So quiet, it echoed. Madison blinked. Her composure cracked, only for a second. Then, she picked up the intercom. Can I get Mr. Dempsey to the front desk, please? She avoided Aaliyah's eyes. But the tension was already spreading. Customers leaned in. Security looked up. The atmosphere had shifted. A storm was coming. Who's Mr. Dempsey? The sound of the intercom faded, but the silence it left behind was louder. Aaliyah stood still. Calm. Grounded. But her eyes slowly scanned the room. From the frozen teller line, to the security guard near the door, to the whispering customer by the potted plant. Mr. Dempsey, she asked, voice even. Madison pretended to shuffle papers. He's the branch manager. I thought it would be best. Best for who? Madison didn't answer. A few steps away, the mother with the child whispered. She hasn't raised her voice once. Exactly, someone else murmured. But look how she's being treated. Aaliyah turned slightly, facing the waiting crowd. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her stillness, her silence, was speaking volumes. And in that exact moment, a door opened. From the side hallway. Footsteps. Sharp. Fast. And then, a man appeared. Late 50s. Blue pinstripe suit. A hint of sweat on his brow. Mr. Dempsey. He looked at Madison. Then at Aaliyah. And something in his expression changed. Not recognition. Not confusion. Something closer to dread. You're her? Mr. Dempsey stopped short. His eyes met Aaliyah's. Something flickered in his gaze. Recognition. Regret. Panic. He straightened his tie and forced a smile. Miss. I'm Mr. Dempsey. Is there an issue? Aaliyah tilted her head slightly. Calm. Measured. Yes. I was trying to make a deposit. She placed the form gently on the counter. No drama, no force, just precision. Mr. Dempsey reached for it. Then froze. His eyes locked on the account name at the top. Suddenly, the color drained from his face. The whisper started from behind the velvet rope. Did she just say deposit? Wait, is that a company name? Is she the owner? Madison peeked over, trying to glimpse the form. Mr. Dempsey stuttered. You're the Aaliyah Hartwell? Aaliyah didn't blink. I was, when I walked in. The room went still again. Even the clicking keyboards paused. I apologize if there was any misunderstanding, Mr. Dempsey said quickly. Too quickly. You mean the part where your teller asked me for 3 IDs? Aaliyah replied. His smile faltered. That shouldn't have happened. A beat passed. And Aaliyah finally smiled, not out of kindness, but out of power. No, she said. It shouldn't have. Maybe you should sit down, Madison. Madison's confidence cracked. She leaned forward, trying to salvage her pride. Wait, you're saying you're making a deposit? How much? Her voice tried to sound casual, but it was tight, strained, almost a whisper. Aaliyah didn't flinch. She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a folder, sleek, black, embossed with a gold emblem. She slid it across the counter slowly. Mr. Dempsey opened it. His eyes widened. He blinked. Once. Twice. And then whispered to himself. 10 million. The whispers in the bank exploded into stunned silence. Madison leaned forward, reading the first page. Her mouth dropped open. You're donating it? To the bank? Aaliyah turned toward her, gaze cold but calm. Correction. I was planning to. Until your attitude convinced me to reconsider. Gasps. A pin dropped silence. Madison staggered back. I didn't mean. Mr. Dempsey interjected quickly, trying to contain the storm. Miss Hartwell, please, let's talk this through. Madison, maybe you should sit down. Madison's legs were shaking. She didn't sit. She collapsed into the chair behind her. Her face pale. Her eyes wide. And in that moment, everyone in the bank realized. She'd just insulted the very woman who could own the bank if she wanted. I came here to help. Not be judged. Aaliyah took a slow breath, steadying herself. The room still buzzed with silent shock. Everyone, customers, tellers, security, all eyes locked on her. She turned toward Mr. Dempsey, her voice calm, but laced with disappointment. I came here quietly. Respectfully. To offer help, not to be judged. Her gaze shifted, pointedly, to Madison. But your staff clearly sees my skin color before they see my intentions. Mr. Dempsey lowered his head slightly, shame flooding his features. Miss Hartwell, I can't apologize enough. Aaliyah looked around. How many others walked in here today, and weren't asked for 3 forms of ID? A silence. No answer. The room echoed with guilt. This isn't just about me, she added, voice rising just enough. It's about every person who's ever been treated like they don't belong, just because of who they are. Madison looked like she wanted to disappear. Aaliyah's words weren't loud, but they echoed in everyone's mind. She wasn't just making a statement. She was making history. You're being watched, Madison. The silence lingered, thick and uneasy. Madison tried to hide behind her desk, but Aaliyah wasn't done. She stepped closer, not aggressive, just firm. She pulled out her phone and turned it slightly, screen facing Madison. You see this? She said calmly. This entire interaction is being recorded. Madison's face drained of color. What? She stammered. There are cameras in this branch, Aaliyah continued. And I have every right to document how I'm treated. She wasn't threatening, just making it clear. I work in compliance, she added, tone measured. So I know exactly how this goes when a story like this gets out. Across the room, a woman customer nodded slowly. She's right. I saw the whole thing. Another man chimed in, it wasn't right, Madison. You did single her out. Madison swallowed hard. Aaliyah didn't smile. She just stood tall, still calm, still poised. So I'll ask one more time, she said, locking eyes with the branch manager. Would you like to continue treating me like a criminal, or would you like to hear why I came? I'm here on behalf of a foundation. Madison blinked, caught completely off guard. Foundation, she echoed, confused. Aaliyah nodded slowly, her tone calm but firm. Yes. The Elijah Rivers Foundation. I'm their chief financial officer. The room went still again. Even the background chatter from customers faded. The foundation handles several large philanthropic investments in education, community housing, and banking equality, Aaliyah continued. And today, your bank was under review. Madison's lips parted, but no words came. You were being audited, Aaliyah added. Secretly. To observe how clients are treated based on race, class, and assumed status. A murmur rippled across the lobby. Two employees at the back exchanged wide-eyed looks. "Your response?" Aaliyah said, folding her arms. "It failed every metric." Madison looked to the branch manager, but he stepped back like he wanted no part in this. "You were rude," Aaliyah continued. "Demanding. Hostile. And yes, discriminatory. You wanted to see 3 IDs?" She pulled out one more document from her purse, thick, embossed. She set it on the desk between them. "This," she said, "is the letter authorizing a $10 million donation." Gasps filled the lobby. Madison staggered back slightly, staring at the document like it had just burned her fingers. "No. This can't be real." Madison's face turned pale. "Wait. This is real," she stammered. She reached for the document with shaky hands, scanning the gold-lettered foundation seal, the signatures at the bottom, the bank's name printed clearly at the top. $10 million, she whispered, her voice cracking. Why would you donate here?" Aaliyah's expression remained cool, controlled. "Because this branch was on our list of potential partners for inner-city school funding and minority-owned business support," she replied. She leaned in, her voice sharp now. "We believed in giving your branch a chance to do the right thing." Madison opened her mouth again but couldn't form words. Behind her, the assistant manager dropped his pen. A security guard took a slow step forward, unsure of whether to intervene or disappear. "You judged me before you even saw my name," Aaliyah said. "But my name is exactly why we're here today." She reached into her purse and pulled out a final item, a slim business card in matte black with gold embossed print. She slid it across the counter. Madison picked it up with trembling fingers. The name read, "Aaliyah Rivers, CFO. The Elijah Rivers Foundation." "Rivers," she murmured. "You're—" "Yes," Aaliyah said. "Elijah Rivers was my father." "She's his daughter?" Madison took a shaky step back, nearly dropping the business card. The whispers started immediately. "Elijah Rivers? As in the Elijah Rivers? The billionaire philanthropist? Wait, she's his daughter?" One elderly man near the waiting area clutched his newspaper tightly, eyes wide. "I read about her in Forbes," he murmured. "Runs the foundation now. Quiet but powerful." Madison looked like the ground had vanished beneath her. Her voice cracked. I didn't know." Aaliyah cut her off with a steady hand. "You didn't need to know," she said, calm but sharp. "Respect shouldn't be based on a surname." The branch manager finally stepped forward, his face pale. "Miss Rivers, I deeply apologize. If we had known—" "But you didn't want to know," Aaliyah interrupted. "You just wanted IDs." The security guard awkwardly shifted, suddenly realizing who he'd nearly confronted. The assistant manager gulped, trying to look invisible. Aaliyah turned back to Madison. "You judged me on skin. On outfit. On assumptions." She paused. "But now, the judgment is yours to wear." She calmly turned around. And behind her, a luxury town car was pulling into the bank's lot. "That's her car?" The tinted black town car glided to a halt right in front of the bank's glass doors. It gleamed under the morning sun, sleek, polished, the kind of car you only saw in magazines or political motorcades. People inside the bank craned their necks to see. "Is that for her?" one whispered. "She didn't take the bus," another muttered, almost embarrassed. The driver stepped out, dressed in a crisp black suit and gloves, and walked swiftly to open the rear door. Aaliyah didn't move yet. She let the silence work. Madison's face had turned ghostly. She tried to speak but couldn't. Even the manager looked like he might faint. "How many IDs do you need now?" Aaliyah asked softly, not out of anger, but out of power. No one answered. She began to walk, graceful, commanding, like she'd been born into respect but didn't flaunt it. She passed Madison slowly. I hope next time you ask fewer questions and show more humanity. As she stepped out into the sunlight, all eyes followed. But no one moved. No one dared. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The bank had never felt so small. You might want to turn on the news. Inside the bank, the tension lingered like smoke. Madison stumbled back to her desk, eyes still wide, her face pale. The manager rubbed his forehead in disbelief. Who was she? Someone finally whispered. Before anyone could answer, the front TV, usually playing silent commercials, suddenly flashed to a breaking news banner. Live, billionaire philanthropist Aaliyah Carter makes surprise visit to Midtown Bank ahead of historic donation. The photo on screen? Aaliyah, standing at the exact counter Madison had humiliated her at. Gasps erupted from the waiting line. Wait, she's that Aaliyah Carter? She's donating how much? To this bank? Madison turned toward the screen, her knees weak. No, she muttered, realizing just how badly she'd messed up. And then came the final blow. The anchor smiled warmly as they read. In an exclusive interview, Ms. Carter said, I wanted to see how I'd be treated before trusting this branch with my donation. Let's just say, I saw enough. Dead silence in the bank. Madison slowly sank into her chair. The consequences had only just begun. She's not done yet. The bank lobby was dead silent. You could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock. No one moved. Madison stared at the TV, frozen. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Across the lobby, an older customer whispered to another. She tested them, and they failed. Just then, the front doors opened again. The same powerful black woman, Aaliyah Carter, walked back into the bank. Not alone. This time, two sharply dressed legal advisors flanked her, one carrying a sleek leather folder. Behind them, a local news camera crew quietly followed in. Everyone stared. Madison shot up from her chair, pale and panicked. Ms. Carter, I didn't know. Aaliyah didn't even look at her. She walked calmly to the manager's office. You'll want to be present for this next part, she said coolly. The manager stood stunned but obeyed, stepping inside. Aaliyah's voice echoed from within the glass room. Let's talk about what happens when a $1 million opportunity walks through your door and gets treated like a threat. The bank staff could only watch. The real statement begins. Inside the glass office, Aaliyah sat across from the bank manager, her posture calm, but her eyes sharp. The lawyers beside her opened the leather folder and slid a thick document across the table. This, one of them said, is the amended donation agreement. You'll notice, Aaliyah added, it now includes mandatory anti-discrimination training for all employees at every branch. Including this one. The manager glanced over the first page and paled. Madison, hovering just outside the office, strained to listen. Her heart pounded in her ears. Aaliyah's gaze finally landed on her. And before you ask, she said without blinking, yes. This training will have evaluations. And your name is already on the list. Camera crews outside captured every second. One bystander whispered, she turned their disrespect into reform. Another murmured, she came back for all of us. Aaliyah reached for the pen, signed the document, then stood. Now, she said, straightening her blazer, this is how you make change. The real statement begins. Inside the glass office, Aaliyah sat across from the bank manager, her posture calm, but her eyes sharp. The lawyers beside her opened the leather folder and slid a thick document across the table. This, one of them said, is the amended donation agreement. You'll notice, Aaliyah added, it now includes mandatory anti-discrimination training for all employees at every branch. Including this one. The manager glanced over the first page and paled. Madison, hovering just outside the office, strained to listen. Her heart pounded in her ears. Aaliyah's gaze finally landed on her. And before you ask, she said without blinking, yes. This training will have evaluations. And your name is already on the list. Camera crews outside captured every second. One bystander whispered, she turned their disrespect into reform. Another murmured, she came back for all of us. Aaliyah reached for the pen, signed the document, then stood. Now, she said, straightening her blazer, this is how you make change. The apology that came too late. Madison rushed forward as Aaliyah exited the glass office, her voice shaky and forced. Miss Aaliyah, I just wanted to say. I didn't know who you were. If I did. Aaliyah turned to face her, the lobby now silent again. That's the problem, she said calmly. You treat people based on who you think they are, not how they should be treated. Madison opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked smaller now, stripped of her fake confidence. It wasn't personal, Madison finally whispered, trying to justify her actions. It was worse than personal, Aaliyah replied, voice cold. It was systemic. The security guard, now standing quietly nearby, lowered his head. From the crowd, a young bank employee, watching the whole thing, pulled out their phone and began to write. I just witnessed history today. Aaliyah gave Madison one last look, not of anger, but of disappointment, before turning away. The moment hung in the air like judgment. The conference room shifted. The glass doors of the executive conference room flew open. 3 senior executives, suits sharp, posture stiff, rushed in as if summoned by royalty. Behind them, Aaliyah entered calmly. She didn't walk in like a guest. She walked in like she owned the building. Miss Aaliyah, one executive said nervously, we deeply regret the way you were treated. This is absolutely unacceptable. Another chimed in, pushing forward a sleek leather chair for her. Please. Sit. We want to make things right. Outside the conference room, the entire bank had gone silent. The tension from earlier had vanished. Now, everyone was whispering her name. The woman who was treated like a nuisance was now the most important person in the building. Madison watched from a distance, jaw clenched, her world collapsing. The tables have turned. Through the glass walls of the conference room, the staff could see Aaliyah calmly speaking, while the executives nodded obediently. She pointed at a document in front of them, the donation terms. One of the executives wiped sweat from his forehead. $10 million, he repeated, barely able to say the number out loud. Aaliyah didn't blink. Yes. But only under one condition. She leaned forward slightly. Her voice still calm, but sharp as a blade. That racist teller is fired. Today. Gasps outside the glass. Madison stood frozen by the teller desk. The color drained from her face. Wait, what? She turned to her colleagues, looking for support. No one said a word. Because they already knew. You're done, Madison. Madison's heels clicked loudly as she stormed toward the conference room. She flung the door open, voice trembling with fake confidence. Excuse me. You can't just, you're going to fire me because she's rich? The room turned silent. Aaliyah slowly looked up from the document, her eyes calm, but cutting straight through Madison's ego. One of the executives stood, his tone cold now. Madison, please leave. Immediately. Madison laughed nervously. You're joking, right? I've worked here for years. And you judged a woman by the color of her skin, Aaliyah said, her voice low but powerful. You humiliated me. The words echoed louder than a scream. Madison turned pale. Her lips moved, but no words came. Security stepped quietly behind her. We'll escort you out now, one said. Aaliyah watched silently. Not with joy. Not with revenge. Just justice. The walk of shame. Madison's breath hitched as the security guards flanked her. Every eye in the bank was now on her, the customers she used to smirk at, the co-workers she used to talk down to. Phones were out. Recording. One woman whispered to her son. See? That's what happens when you treat people badly. Madison's face was pale, her hands trembling. She turned to Aaliyah one last time. "You ruined me." Aaliyah didn't flinch. She simply replied, "No. You did that all by yourself." The guards gently guided Madison out, past the velvet ropes, the teller counters, the stunned faces. The doors closed behind her. And just like that, the respected bank teller was gone. "Let's talk numbers." The bank manager re-entered the conference room, this time with a respectful bow of his head. "Ms. Aaliyah, again, I deeply apologize." "Save it," Aaliyah said coolly, placing the signed donation form on the table. "Let's discuss how this bank will handle this gift." The room was quiet. One executive cleared his throat. $10 million is an incredible gesture. "It's not a gesture," Aaliyah interrupted. "It's an investment in change." She leaned forward. "This bank will fund financial literacy programs for young black women nationwide, under my conditions." Another exec murmured, "Of course." Aaliyah wasn't done. "And we'll be renaming the community outreach branch." She smiled faintly. "To honor my mother." The men nodded quickly. The power in the room had shifted completely. A name that meant everything. A few weeks later, a grand reopening banner fluttered in the warm breeze outside the newly refurbished community outreach branch. The sign above the door had been replaced. Bold, elegant letters now read, "The Lillian James Empowerment Center." Aaliyah stood quietly in front of it, her eyes misty. Her father, Arthur, placed a proud hand on her shoulder. "She would have been proud, kiddo. She taught me everything," Aaliyah whispered. "How to stand tall, even when others tried to tear me down." People gathered, reporters, families, young girls, even former bank staff, all clapping as the ribbon was cut. The same white security guard who once ignored her offered her a respectful nod now. "Ms. James," he said. She returned it. Gracefully. Because today wasn't about revenge. It was about rewriting the story. The lesson that echoed. Later that evening, Aaliyah sat across from a young girl at the center's community desk. The girl fidgeted nervously, a crumpled college application in her hands. "I don't think I belong here. I don't have money or the right name." Aaliyah smiled softly. She reached into a drawer, pulled out a sleek black pen, and handed it to the girl. "Neither did I," she said. "But you know what I had?" "What?" "Proof. That I was worth it. That I mattered. And that no one, not a single person, could take that from me." The girl blinked, then smiled through tears. And as she began to fill out the form, Aaliyah looked out the window. The city lights shimmered. Her mother's name glowing across the street in gold. And for the first time in a long time, she felt peace. The news spreads like fire. The next morning, news channels all over the country flashed headlines. Black philanthropist donates $10 million after facing discrimination at bank. Aaliyah James turns prejudice into power. Clips of the viral moment, her signing the check, the stunned faces, were playing on loops. Talk show hosts debated the issue. College students discussed it in classrooms. Children looked up to her. Aaliyah's calm courage was now a national conversation. Scene 27. Boardroom shock. Inside the corporate tower of the bank's headquarters, the top board members sat in tense silence. One executive slammed his hand on the table. "Do you understand what we've just lost? A $10 million opportunity in our reputation." Another murmured, "She wasn't just some woman. She's the founder of the Lillian James Foundation." Silence. Then the chairman stood. "Whoever caused this embarrassment will be dealt with." The call they never expected. Back at the local branch, the manager, the one who had stayed silent when the teller insulted Aaliyah, received a direct call from headquarters. "You'll be hosting Ms. James again," the voice said firmly. "Treat her like the woman she is, or clear your desk." He swallowed hard. A letter to her late mother. Later that night, Aaliyah sat alone by her desk, the city lights glowing through the tall windows behind her. She opened a small box. Inside, an old photo of her mother, smiling, radiant, proud. Aaliyah pulled out a notepad and began writing. Mama, today, I stood up. Not just for me. For you. For every woman who's ever been told she doesn't belong. I did it with grace. Just like you taught me. A tear rolled down her cheek, but it wasn't sadness. It was strength. She smiled faintly and folded the letter, tucking it gently behind the photo. I hope you're proud, she whispered. The CEO's personal call. The next morning, Aaliyah's phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A deep, composed voice spoke. Ms. Carter? This is Charles Denton. I'm the CEO of this bank. She blinked. He continued, respectful and direct. I reviewed the footage. I read your note. I saw everything. A pause. I owe you an apology. Not just as a banker, but as a man who leads an institution that failed you yesterday. Aaliyah listened silently, her eyes focused, but not cold. We want to invite you to the board meeting next week. Not as a guest. As a partner. You're changing the face of this bank. Whether we're ready or not. She closed her eyes for a moment, then replied calmly. I'm not doing this for power. I'm doing it so that the next woman who walks into your branch won't need to prove her worth. He replied softly, with respect. That's exactly why we need you. The training room. A week later. A large conference room, usually reserved for executive meetings, had been transformed. Training chairs lined the space. At the front, a large display read, Bias Awareness and Inclusive Service, led by Ms. Aaliyah Carter. All staff were present. Even the security guard. Even the teller. The atmosphere was tense, but curious. Then Aaliyah entered. No security this time. No press. Just her, in a sharp navy suit, eyes calm but firm. She didn't start with a greeting. She started with a question. How many of you judged me before I even spoke that day? Silence. Several hands rose, hesitantly. Even the teller, head bowed. Aaliyah nodded. Thank you for your honesty. She walked to the front, clicked the first slide. A photo appeared, her. From the security footage. Looking, uncertain, small, and out of place. This is how I was seen. Click. The next slide showed her donation letter. Her name, her foundation, her mission. This is who I actually am. She let that sit in the room. Now let's talk about what happened in between, and how to make sure it never happens again. The letter. Later that evening. Aaliyah sat at her home office desk, the city skyline twinkling behind her. She wasn't dressed like a CEO now, just a soft gray hoodie and reading glasses. On her desk sat a handwritten letter. She read it silently, a small smile forming as she reached the end. It was from the bank teller. Dear Ms. Carter, I'm writing this not just to apologize, but to thank you. You could have humiliated me. Instead, you taught me. I never realized how deep my assumptions ran. You didn't just change your workplace. You changed me. Aaliyah folded the letter gently, tucked it back into the envelope. Then she looked up at a photo on her bookshelf, her late father. His smile, forever calm. The man who taught her respect starts where judgment ends. She whispered, You were right, Dad. Grace always wins. She closed her laptop and stood by the window, watching the quiet night. A peaceful breath in. The battle had been loud. But the victory? It was silent and permanent. The classroom. 1 week later. Aaliyah stood in front of a group of teenagers in a local community center. She wasn't here as a billionaire today. She was here as a mentor. The whiteboard behind her read, bias, power, respect. The same words that had shaped her journey. A student raised her hand. Miss Carter, why didn't you just yell at the bank teller that day? Aaliyah smiled. Because yelling doesn't change minds. But Grace? Grace leaves a mark that lasts. The class nodded, some writing it down. She walked to the front row, kneeling beside a young black girl who reminded her of herself at 17. Never forget, Aaliyah said softly. The world will try to define your value. But only you can define your worth. The girl smiled. As the scene faded out, soft piano music swelled in the background. The screen went dark. Then one final line appeared in white letters. Respect isn't something you ask for. It's something you show, even when no one else does.